the higher level you're operating at, the more people you're taking care of, the more you sort of earn respect and fame. And I think those are good reasons to be famous. If fame is empty, if you're famous just because your name showed up in a lot of places or your face showed up in a lot of places, then that's a hollow fame. And I think deep down you will know that. And so it'll be fragile and you'll always be afraid of losing it. And then you'll be forced to perform. So the kind of fame that pure actors and celebrities have, I wouldn't want. But the kind of fame that's earned because you did something useful, why dodge that? No, you can't.
There's a challenge, I think, especially if people make very loud public proclamations about things. You mentioned there about you're almost a hostage to the things that you used to say, that being able to update your opinions and change your mind looks very similar to the internet as hypocrisy does. No, the difference between me saying something in the past and saying something different now is perhaps I've learned, perhaps I've updated my beliefs,
right.
But so few people do it in a legitimate way. I think that the grifter shill, you see, this is the smoking gun that shows that he didn't really believe that thing all along.
Right.
And I went to a retreat in LA a couple of years ago, and there was a guy that I used to follow, that a big business and productivity advice content creator, really, really successful. And he just totally stepped back from everything and went like monk mode and focused on his business. I asked him why, and he said, I started feeling like I had to live up to in private the things that I was saying in public.
Right. Yeah, it's a what was it that who said it? Was it Mencken that foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, right? But essentially, look, all learning is error correction, right? Every knowledge creation system works through correcting errors, making guesses and correcting errors. So by definition, if you're learning, you're going to be wrong most of the time, and you'll be updating your priors. And so, for example, I did this Joe Rogan podcast, I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 years ago. And people will call out like the one thing that didn't turn out to be correct, right? And it's just like, and they just beat on it because it helps them in their mind raise their status a little bit. Aha, I caught him in an error. Well, I think if you catch someone in a blatant lie where they believe one thing and they say another, that's legit. That's a character flaw. They shouldn't be lying. But on the other hand, if they just made a guess at something and they got it wrong, and by the way, mostly it's about the AI AGI thing, and I think I'm still right about that, but it's a different story. People who think we have achieved AGI just fail a Turing test from their side. But it's funny how people latch on to single proclamations. But the reality is all of us are dynamical systems. We're always changing. We're always learning. We're always growing. And hopefully we're correcting errors. What you don't want to be doing is lying in public so that because you're trying to look good. And I think people can smell that. What this world really lacks right now is authenticity. And because everybody wants something, they want to be seen as something, they want to be something that they're not. And so you do catch a lot of people saying things that they don't really believe. And I think people are very sensitive to that.
Bullshit radars have become hypersensitized to try and work out whether or not this person means the thing that they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are wrong. Most of us are wrong most of the time, especially in any new endeavor.
Difference between being wrong and disingenuous, though.
Correct.
Purposefully wrong.
Correct. Exactly.
Contrived.
So I think that's the big difference. If someone is wrong, no big deal, as long as they have a genuine reason for saying what they're saying or believing what they're believing. But if they are lying to elevate their status or their appearance or to live up to some expectation, that's the mistake. And that's a mistake not just for the listener, it's a mistake for themselves, because then you're going to get trapped in a hall of mirrors. You yourself are going to be consistent with your past proclamations. So if you're lying to others, you're going to be lying to yourself.
You're puppeted by a person that you are not even.
That's right. Yeah, it's like what was that line? You're basically trying to impress people who don't care about you. They
don't like the real you, and if they saw the real you, they wouldn't care. And the people who would like the real you don't get to see the real you, so they pass you by.
Right. You only want the respect of the very, very few people that you respect. Trying to demand respect from the masses is a fool's errand.
Status games, the allure of accruing, whether it's fame, actual fame, or just the competition comparison trap, it's always there. There's a real draw of being swayed by social approval. How should people learn to get less distracted by status games in that way?
I think it just helps to see that status games don't matter as much as they used to. In old society, let's go back hunter-gatherer times, there was no such thing as wealth. You just had what you could carry. There was no stored wealth. So wealth games didn't really exist to wealth creation games. All that existed was status games. If you were high status, then you got what little was available first. But even back then, you had to earn your status by taking care of the tribe. Now we have wealth creation where you can actually create a product or a service. You can scale that product or service and you can provide abundance for a lot of people. And that's not zero sum. That's a positive sum game. I can be wealthy. You can be wealthy. We can create things together. And clearly, since we are all collectively far, far wealthier than we were in hunter-gatherer times, wealth creation is positive. But status is limited. There's limited status to go around. It's a ranking ladder. It's a hierarchy. And so to rise in status, somebody else has to lower in status. Now, you can have multiple kinds of status, so you can expand some kinds of status, but it's not like wealth creation where it can go infinitely, where we can all be, living in the stars and moon bases or Mars colonies or what have you. So just realize the status games are inherently limited. They're always combative. They always require direct combat, whereas wealth creation games can be just you're creating products. You don't have to fight anybody else. Yes, in the marketplace, your product has to succeed, but that's not quite the same as invective against other people or being angry with other people or feeling pushed down or pushed up or having a beef with somebody. So I would argue that wealth creation games are both more pleasant. They're positive sum, and they actually have concrete material returns. If you have more money, you can buy more things.
Show me where you can exchange your status at the bank.
Exactly. Yeah, it's vague and it's fuzzy. Now, you see people get rich. They have money. What do they want? They want status. So they go to Hollywood, start starring in movies. They donate to nonprofits. They go to Cannes or Davos or what have you. And they start trying to trade the money for status. So, people always want what they don't have. And we are evolutionarily hardwired for status because, as I said, wealth creation didn't really exist until the agricultural revolution, when you could store grain, and then the industrial revolution took it to another level, and now the information age is taking it to yet another level. But there's never been an easier time to make money. Yes, it's still hard, but there's never been an easier time to create wealth because there's so much leverage out there. There's so much opportunity. You still have to go find it. It's not easy. It's not going to fall on your lap, and you have to learn something and know something and do something interesting. But nevertheless, it's possible to many more people. A few hundred years ago, you were born a serf, you were going to die a serf. There was almost no way out of that. That's changed. And so I would argue that you're better off focusing on wealth games and status games. If you're trying to build up, for example, your following on a social network and get famous and then get rich off of being famous, that's a much harder path than getting rich first. And then go for your fame afterwards would be my advice.
Well, a lot of people do that, as you said. It's funny how people who have achieved such a level of wealth, you don't think, why do you need the status? Given that most people use status to then try and cash in to achieve wealth. If you've achieved fuck you money already, if you're post money or asset heavy, as it's known, why are you trying to go in the other direction? Well, as you said, because we've got an illustrious history biologically of wanting status, and wealth is kind of novel.
It's new. Wealth is something that you have to understand more intellectually. Yeah, there's a physical component, more food, more survival. But to truly understand the effects and the powers and the abilities and limitations and the advantages and disadvantages of wealth, you have to use your neocortex a lot more.
Does that mean
it's not limbic?
The reason to play the game is to win the game and be done with it is harder to win and be done with for status than it is for wealth?
That's a good observation. I hadn't thought that through, but you're right. Yeah, I think that's right. I think people will always want more status, but I think you can be satisfied at a certain level of wealth.
Well, as well, you always have this sort of sense, and this is what leaderboards are, right? This is the iTunes Billboard chart.
That's right.
And it is zero sum.
Right.
And it is, I guess, the Forbes richest people on the planet.
Yeah, that one's harder to climb the ladder on. But the fact that, for example, iTunes and YouTube can put you in competition against your contemporaries every single day and make you go up and down and show you likes and comments and ratings.
This is how much you fell. This is how much you're up. Yeah.
Exactly. They keep you running on that treadmill forever.
Jimmy Carr has this cool idea where he says trajectory is more important than position. So if you are number 101 in the world, but last year you were number 200, versus you're number 2 in the world, but last year you were number 1, there is this sense of the deceleration is very, very tangible. And it's why,
again, it goes back to evolution. Something that is bleeding eventually dies unless you stop the bleeding. So you're hardwired not to lose what you have. And because we evolved in conditions where we're so close to just not surviving, you don't want to give anything up. It's hardwired into us to not give anything up.
So you grip tightly.
That's right.
If you struggle to stay asleep because your body gets too hot or too cold, this is going to help. Just add an 8 Sleep Pod 4 Ultra to your mattress like a fitted sheet, and it will automatically cool down or warm up each side of your bed up to 20 degrees. It's got integrated sensors that track your sleep time, your sleep phases, your HRV, your snoring, and your heart rate with 99% accuracy. And it even starts cooling or heating your bed an hour before you get into it. That is why 8 Sleep has been clinically proven to increase total sleep up to 1 hour every night. Best of all, they've got a 30-day sleep trial, so you can buy it and sleep on it for 29 nights, and if you don't like it, they will give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra by going to the link in the description below or heading to 8sleep.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's EIGHT sleep.com/modernwisdom and modernwisdom at checkout. The worst outcome in the world is not having self-esteem. Why?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, I look at the people, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I look at the people who don't like themselves, and that's the toughest slot because they're always wrestling with themselves, and it's hard enough to face the outside world, and no one's going to like you more than you like yourself. So if you're struggling with yourself, then the outside world becomes an insurmountable challenge. And it's hard to say why people have low self-esteem. It might be genetic. It might just be circumstantial. A lot of times I think it's because they just weren't unconditionally loved as a child. And that sort of seeps in at a deep core level. But self-esteem issues can be the most limiting. One interesting thought is that, to some extent, self-esteem is a reputation you have with yourself. You're watching yourself at all times. You know what you're doing, and you have your own moral code. Everyone has a different moral code. But if you don't live up to your own moral code, the same code that you hold others to, it will damage your self-esteem. So perhaps one way to build up your self-esteem is to live up to your own code very rigorously. Have one and then live up to it. Another way to raise your self-esteem might be to do things for others. If I look back on my life and, what are the moments that I'm actually proud of? There's very far and few between. And it's not that often. And it's not the things you would expect. It's not the material success. It's not having learned this thing or that. It's when I made a sacrifice for somebody or something that I loved. And that's when I'm actually, ironically, most proud. Now, that's through an explicit mental exercise, but I'll bet you at some level I'm recording that implicitly. So that tells me that even if I am not being loved, then the way to create love is to give love, to express love through sacrifice and through duty. And so I think doing things like that can build up your self-esteem really fast.
It's interesting when you talk about sacrifice, because a lot of the time people say, well, I sacrificed so much for my job. It's like, yeah, but that was you sacrificing something that you wanted less for something that you wanted more, as opposed to genuinely taking some sort of cost. And I wonder whether if self-esteem is you adhering to your internal, your actions and your values aligning, even when it's difficult, or perhaps even more so when it's difficult. I wonder whether there is a price that people who are more introspective, high integrity, pay, because you think, well, you've got this heavier set of overheads that you need to pay in some way.
Well, if being ethical were profitable, everybody would do it, right? So at some level, it does involve a sacrifice. But that sacrifice can also be thought of as you're thinking for the long term rather than the short term. For example, the virtues are the set of virtues is a set of beliefs that if everybody in society followed them as individuals, it would lead to win-win outcomes for everybody. So if I am honest and you are honest, then we can do business more easily. We can interact more easily because we can trust each other. So even though there might be a few liars in the system, as long as there aren't too many liars and too many cheaters, a high-trust society where everybody's honest is better off. And I think a lot of the virtues work this way, right? If I don't go around sleeping with your wife and you don't sleep with mine, and if I don't take all the food that's at the table first and so on, then we all get along better and we can play win-win games. In game theory, the most famous game is Prisoner's Dilemma.